Then there's California, a podcast celebrating its 6th year, featuring members of the California State Senate Democratic Caucus in conversation about their legislative priorities, their lives, their opinions, and perspectives that help make California exceptional. From the state capitol in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. There is some breaking news out of Stockton, California. After years, decades, generations of lobbying, advocating, promotion, and pursuit, praying and cajoling, construction has begun on a new $54 million classroom, student services, and admin building that will be the new Stockton campus of California State University Stanislaus. It will expand the current capacity of Stan State, as they call it, provide significant tech and service upgrades, and most importantly, provide special recognition for the tremendous potential of the youth in the northern and western part of the valley. Now, you might ask, that's your breaking news? A college campus building in Stockton? But it really is big, banner headline, top of the fold news, especially if you are the persistent, caring state lawmaker who represents Stockton and has herself bucket listed a college university footprint in her part of the state for years and is finally seeing the dream come true. It is one of many heartfelt public service and holistic policy initiatives that are dreams come true for a Valley elected official whose heart and smart approach to legislative advocacy is leading to improved and, shall we say, life-changing opportunities for education, improved treatment for the homeless and mentally ill, and the dignity that can and should be sustained for those who are terminally ill. All points of pride, and she and we can celebrate all of this as she prepares to end her legislative career this fall. Dr. Susan Talamantes Eggman represents California's 5th Senate District, which includes San Joaquin County, including her home city of Stockton, a significant portion of Stanislaus County, and that Sacramento County community of Galt. She is a social worker, a military veteran, a former Stockton City Council member, former Assembly member, and elected to the State Senate in 2020. She is chair of the Legislative LGBTQ Caucus. She and her spouse are mothers of a teenager. That's work right there. And she is a baker, starting during the pandemic, of delicious honey in the rye bread. Senator Eggman last joined us in the new year of 2023, along with Senator Tom Umberg, to talk about the launch of care courts in California, of which they are the architects, and further assistance to the homeless and mentally ill in this state. And as she looks to the end of her notable legislative years, no going-away parties yet, we are glad to have her back with us again. Good to see you, Senator Eggman.
Good to see you too, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
I wasn't originally going to make you default to yet another podcast reference to bread making, but come to find out, you're still doing it.
I'm still making bread.
People are still coveting it. I was outside one time, I heard somebody come up to you and go, Senator Eggman, oh, we want some more of that bread.
Yeah.
And you, of course, obliged.
Yeah.
So it's still going for you.
Yeah. I don't always oblige, though. People just demand it. Where's my bread? Where's my bread? I'm like, I got to do something special to earn the bread.
Well, you know, I've had some, so I'm flattered to know that. But you've become an artisan. I mean, I've seen some of your bread on social media. I mean, it doesn't look just delicious. It actually like you could frame it.
Yeah, and I gave one to one of my friends, and I didn't even think about it. He's a photographer, so he really made it look pretty like art.
Yeah, which is, wow, this is gorgeous. You started baking during COVID. During the pandemic, people were searching for something to do that had relevance and reference to life and faith and connection. Have you seen your bread baking passion evolve from just a pandemic hobby? Has it deepened since you started it beyond just a way to pass the time?
Absolutely. And I think it'll be, I mean, I'm not a fortune teller, but I think it'll be with me the rest of my life.
Good.
It has just become a really interesting way. I mean, it takes a while, right? You have to keep your culture alive. You have to keep the mother culture alive. Then to start a bread, you have to, start with a little bit, and then it grows from there. So the whole process, like from the culture I started in 2020 is still alive. That takes feed, that takes love, and then
it's a culture named after your home community, right?
Yeah. I call her Victoria, right there, Victory Park, and to make a loaf of bread, it takes me about 2.5, 3 days. Like I have some that I loafed this morning that I started on Saturday that I'll bake tomorrow morning. So it's a long process, and the longer it ferments, the more it sours and just develops, I think, some really interesting flavors. But I love doing it. I love giving it to people. I've started a little Instagram, TikTok video called Sourdough Friends.
That's fabulous.
Yeah,
wow.
I've become pretty goofy. And Brian, if I could tie two of my, so I love making bread. And I thought that was interesting. Brian said in the beginning that the smart and heart, because I'd like to think I'm halfway smart. I've been able to do some big legislation. But one of the ones I'll always be most proud of was the End of Life Option Act.
Yes.
And recently, and so that's when people can, make the decision to end their life when no other options are available. So recently I received a message from one of my constituents who I've known for years, since before I got on the city council. They've been good supporters, good people. They were both in the Peace Corps, have been married 50 years. And I saw through social media that Bob had developed cancer. And I saw that it was pancreatic cancer, which never goes quite the way we'd like it. And so some weeks later, I got a message from that couple, and they just reached out and said, "We just want to thank you for the End of Life Option Act that Bob, has decided he's going to exercise his right. We're working with Kaiser. We're going to get the cocktail on Monday. He watched both his mother and his brother die horrible, agonizing deaths. He doesn't want us to go through that, and he doesn't want to go through that. And so thank you so much for providing that opportunity for dignity for our family. And P.S., we love your sourdough bread videos." And so I was
beautiful.
Struck by that. So, of course, what I had to do, Brian, is on the morning that I knew they were getting the bread, I prepared 2 days earlier and prepared the biggest loaf of just a real traditional sourdough bread I could, and took it over there warm in the morning for them to have it during the day. And later she reached out to me and she said, my son brought it in still warm from the front porch, and we shared it all together as a family as my husband died.
That's so beautiful. And how privileged can a legislator be to, so many years after the fact, for a bill that has been challenged and tweaked and debated ad nauseum, it's still touching people's lives, and will continue.
It will continue to touch people's lives, and so does the bread, just in different kinds of ways, right? But it's that nurturing, it's that telling people that you see them, you see their pain, and right, if there should be another path, then we'll make it happen.
Well, someone once said that the more people's hands are in the dough, continuing this metaphor, the more power is in the people's hands. And you could find that with the End of Life Option Act, particularly because bread is the ultimate food. It's
ultimate
biblical.
Comfort.
I am the bread of life.
I am the bread of life, right? And every bread I give, but bread is life, right? It's the process.
Well, I'm so glad that you're still doing it, and glad to see you keep on doing it too. Well, speaking of COVID, as we were just a moment ago, a quick aside on that. After more than 1,400 consecutive days of COVID deaths since the pandemic began 4+ years ago, and we were talking about it so much, but there was a headline a month or so ago that said there was one day back in April, early April, when California reached a milestone of actually having one day pass when no one died of COVID.
Wow.
It's become more routine in our lives now. And wow, people are still dying from this. The first date without a COVID death here in California since March of 2020. Merely a symbolic moment in the whole roller coaster element of all of this. But after noting there have been 107,000 plus deaths in the state, it makes you pause to think about just the impact that it's had on us. And people are still feeling vulnerable and alienated and unsafe. What are your reflections on that and thoughts learned from all of this in the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, it certainly wasn't good for us, right? I mean, we came out with some good habits, right? I think we're better about our work-life balance. I think people developed some good hobbies. I will forever be grateful for the bread. I think people came to make different decisions about their lives, which, was probably positive. But I think the amount of time that we spent isolated and the division that it's created in us re-debating science and what safety means and what freedom means and all those things, I don't think our country's come out in a great place. But I hope that we will continue. I was struck when we were having the ceasefire protests at some of our universities that those are the same kids who were potentially going to graduate who didn't get a graduation in 2020. And now here in 2024, another kind of like social upheaval. And they were potentially some missed another graduation. So, I think it's interesting. It's marked by a 4-year term of high school for a kid, or 4-year university, or a 4-year term for a legislator. But we blocked out our time, I think, in that 4-year dividend, and we're still looking at pre and post. I mean, everything I think about almost now was that pre-COVID? That was post-COVID. That was during COVID.
Yes. What seems like forever ago and yet seems like yesterday.
Yes.
Well, June, and as we speak here, we'll be coming to the end of Pride Month. June has already been a busy month for you as the chair of the LGBTQ caucus. The celebrations, you were on a motorcycle celebrating with Dykes on Bikes. I don't know if you've ever ridden a motorcycle, but you looked at home.
Did I look at home? Yeah.
Like you do it every day. But how's Pride Month been going so far? Some of your thoughts on the feelings, themes, attitudes?
Yeah, it's great. And the LGBTQ caucus, as you know, I mean, our community has been under attack again since COVID, right?
Yeah.
Now school boards have become just kind of bastions of political upheaval and strife. And we've seen some really anti-LGBTQ things being passed, and book bans, things that we thought were kind of behind us are back again. So the LGBTQ caucus, we hope to be very deliberate in trying to turn down the kind of the temperature on some of the rhetoric, and are introducing a anti-public outing of kids, forced outing of kids. And so we've introduced that, and I'm hoping, and again, I reached out to all my colleagues who have received bread from me on the other side of the aisle and just said, I don't necessarily expect you to vote for it, but I would like us to have some pleasant dialogue and some civil dialogue. And hopefully, right, if I can get that, then I'll consider it a win. The LGBTQ caucus had our Pride event this last week. Yeah, and for my last year, I wanted to bring that big lesbian energy. So we got honored the Dykes on Bikes, and we did a procession.
That's fantastic.
Down Capitol Mall.
You mentioned the school boards and the rhetoric. You've spoken out recently in support of this legislation that would prohibit California school districts from outing students who identify as transgender, the Safety Act. You have an understandable, obviously, passion about it. Talk about that bill.
Yeah, and people keep saying, you're trying to take away parental rights. No, we're saying schools shouldn't get in between kids and their relationship with their parents. That is between a parent and a child. Schools shouldn't enter into that. When kids go to school, they're always looking for a friendly person that is the developmental task of high school. It is finding who you are, finding who your people are, beginning that separation from your parents as being the most important to you, then your peer group, your teachers. So it is a natural process that we don't think it should be played politics with by trying to pressure teachers into getting in between kids and their relationship with their parents.
Well, one positive note out of this, which you have remarked on before, it seems like it's been a tough spring season for a lot of these social conservatives that want to impose their agendas and intimidation on local school boards and the LGBTQ youth in their communities. In particular, one down in Southern California, the Temecula Valley School Board president was recalled from office.
Yep.
And it sounds like people are saying, notwithstanding whatever your viewpoints are, we're tired of all the rhetoric. We're tired of all the bitterness. Even conservatives are saying that.
Nobody likes the constant fighting. I mean, it's not a good look. And it's certainly not what we want to be modeling to our youth. Like, this is how we solve our problems, is to scream and get signs. And that is not civil discourse. And I think the general voting public, when they actually see that, they're like, oh, is that what we're doing? That's not what we meant to do. And we'll right itself. And we're just going to, the caucus through our legislation is going to try to provide some guidelines to be able to help that process along.
The process, the journey of coming out, especially sensitive for young LGBTQ youth, trying to find a supportive adult, whether it's family, oftentimes it is not. It's not easy. It's often not safe. And without the support, many youth couldn't navigate it, couldn't do it, couldn't survive.
Navigate it, right. Yeah, I think what you said is right on the money. And that's part of what this act will do, too, is like to provide information for parents, to provide resources that parents, if their kid is questioning or coming out or wherever they are in their process, to be able to support them. Because it can be a scary time. And we know that the number one demographic who are out in the streets are LGBTQ kids who often get thrown away, who often get kicked out of their home, who often are told not under my roof. So this idea that every family is a safe family, a child should be able to decide when it's time for them to come out, if they're going to come out at all.
I don't know if I've ever asked you about your coming out story, but did you have the support you needed from peers, from other family, from loved ones?
I certainly didn't come out to my parents until I was already had established myself. I came out to myself in my late teens, and I came out to my parents in my early 20s. It was a process, and I never thought they would disown me. But I was just worried. That was a long time ago, Brian. That was a long time ago.
But you weren't going to track test it with your family.
That's not the first person you tell. Hey, guess what?
Yes.
Guess
but,
what?
But you had a support system of peers that you could share this with. That even if they were surprised, they loved you enough to accept you for who you were.
And I'll just point that one of the young men I work with, he shares the story that the first person he told was a teacher at school, and he felt safe because she had talked about her former husband was now married to a man. So he thought, oh, she must understand. And so that was the first person he shared with, and it was, just fine, and got to like, whew, what a relief, because he felt like if he told his parents, he would lose at least his father. And this is when he was 17 in high school still. And he finally came out to his dad, I think when he was 21. And his dad indeed disowned him. He has no relationship with his father.
Wow.
So thank God that wasn't the first person he told at 17.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
He would have been kicked out of his house, maybe not been able to graduate high school. And like so many stories we hear, another kid on the streets. And then, he graduated top of his class at Berkeley, San Jose State, and now is gainfully employed here at the Capitol.
That's beautiful. I know one of the priorities that's a continued priority for the LGBTQ caucus is leadership and representation. And those of you that are terming out, those that are coming in, Senator Menjivar in one of our past podcasts lamented the fact that when you and Senator Atkins leave, she's the only lesbian left in the Senate.
Right.
And that might not be for too long,
right.
But she's enjoyed that equality and shared experience, and she'll be solo there for a little while.
Yeah. Although I think Assemblymember Cervantes is coming over.
So hopefully she won't be there too long. But we've talked about the diversity with the people of color and women, and we celebrate that. How's the representation quotient for the caucus coming forward?
We're at 12, which is stunning.
Yeah.
That is, we're the largest caucus in the nation's history, and certainly in the nation right now, because we are 10% of a body, which is about reflective of what the demographic looks like. But yes, we will be down on our lesbians.
Which is ironic considering it was lesbians that started
this whole movement. Yeah. But we do have, and we're hoping to get our first transgender person.
Yes.
But we'll have more women, but we also have more bis now, which is a different thing I've seen in my evolution, right? Before it was hard for people to come out, and now people are eager to say, oh, I'm bi, and I'm part of the caucus as well. So now I think it's seen as a benefit for people versus before they saw it as a real detriment.
Right. I wanted to focus, of course, on some of the issues that are relevant to you related to homeless and mentally ill that you have been a major architect of here in the last year or so. Proposition 1, which was on the ballot in March, which you helped shepherd out of the legislature and put on the ballot last year, and obviously potential benefits to severely mentally ill in California. Governor Newsom understandably went all in on Prop 1, $6.4 billion bond, passage of which hopefully alleviates the state's homeless crisis, restructuring mental health services. The governor became the face of it, doing commercials, starring in ads. Prop 1 ultimately passed, but it was slim. It was close. And despite polls showing an overwhelming majority of people backing it, it was a nail-biter, a week plus before the final vote came in, and we weren't sure if it was going to pass. Less than 30,000 votes there in a state of 40 million people. It shocked everybody, could have fallen in defeat, and not to put you in a position of Monday morning quarterbacking all the election nuances, but must have been a nail-biter for you, too.
It was.
A lot of woulda, shoulda, couldas here.
Yeah. Anyone could be a Monday morning quarterback. I will say the electric was grumpy, right? People are grumpy right now, and rightfully so, right? I mean, I think people said, we keep throwing money and we don't see any change. What is going to be different about this? In retrospect, we probably could have spent a little bit more time talking about what Prop 1 actually did and a lot of the accountability measures, because I think we didn't talk a lot about that on the campaign trail, the accountability measures that are kind of baked into to Prop 1. But, it passed. Now we got to make it work. I'm
right.
all for looking forward and how do we now implement it to make it work? Because it is a major building block to the whole reformation of our mental health system.
Well, it can help thousands of sick persons, homeless, mentally ill, including veterans. And it actually helps support Care Court, another element of this. Is that right?
Yes. Also helps support Care Court. And then, as you know, I passed SB 43, which was the redefinition of grave disability.
Right.
And so with that and with the behavioral health youth initiative we have on the front end, we have really re-engineered our entire behavioral health system, how we include substance abuse and how we include housing and sort of this whole idea of whole person care. Now we just have to make it work.
And the idea of all of these is, of course, to try to get to people early on in
so
the display of
yes.
their illness, so we're not pulling them off the cliff, so to speak, or off the street.
Right, exactly. And hopefully within the next 5 years, I'll say, we should begin to see a real shift on the streets of California and the heartache that I think that we all see when we see people who clearly need help and are languishing out in our streets and alleyways.
When it comes to Care Court, the counties, of course, are the implementers of this. They're the ones that have to deal with on the streets, on the ground. A couple of them started pilot programs right off the top. So far as we speak, a year plus now since it's been implemented, is there success? Are you seeing results, some movement on the needle on this?
I think it's too soon to say. I think we're still in the implementation period. I know I've talked with San Francisco. And I think they would like to see an expansion of maybe some of the diagnoses. But Stanislaus County is doing a great job with it. And they're, working within the same system.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it depends, I think a bigger county and a smaller county, the relationship that people might have with their public defenders, because this is a kind of a new role for a public defender.
Right.
So I think you have to think about what is service to your client, because it can't just be non-participation in the program. I would hope that that wouldn't be their main goal, is to make sure people don't participate in the program. I think a lot of public defenders come by it as saying all care should be voluntary. Voluntary is best. We always say that, but sometimes people need those extra nudges. And so I just hope that we don't get into a contentious issue with our public defender system.
For what I've read from some families, they don't want it to be voluntary. They want it to be
like more
mandatory.
Teeth. They would like more teeth and mandatory, but then it's right. That's different then, right?
Yes.
Then it becomes a different process.
Right. I respect very much your lens on this issue as a social worker, and I would, of course, obviously your colleagues care as deeply as you do, and some of this has been very bipartisan in its approach and how it's rolled out. But is it fair to say that you have perhaps a more complex or nuanced perspective on this, personally and professionally, than some of your other colleagues? And when we talk about the heart and smart, you can be as relentless as the next lawmaker when it's an issue that you're really passionate about.
Oh yes, I can. Yes, I don't think any of my peers would tell you I'm lackadaisical or
right.
Well, I mean, I come to it as I've my first job, not being paid by my family's farm, which wasn't much, was in a locked psychiatric facility. So I have been doing this since I was a kid, since I was 18. I was doing milieu management at Crestwood Hospital, and have worked in different parts of mental health and substance abuse since then. And if I'm not doing the practice myself, I'm setting up programs, or I'm teaching it, so I've been in and around it a long time and have seen a lot of the changes. I was there for the first Mental Health Services Act, the implementation of that. So I come at it from a professional perspective. Mm-hmm. I come at it, again, as somebody who's had family members and close friends, as we all have, suffer from this. And then as a policymaker, like, how do we make these systems better? How do we make it work? So I come from it from kind of a holistic angle, like how do we reduce the amount of harm people are experiencing? Mm-hmm. How do we try to reduce a lot of the side effects that comes from long time living on the streets. And I have huge empathy for the families who are desperately trying to get their loved ones help. And we have made it incredibly difficult in the state of California to get help for someone unless they are fully voluntary, or unless they're so ill they come in to the morgue or in a police car, which is not the way that we want people to show up for treatment.
Right. Well, speaking of the state of California and the state budget, you are former chair of Budget Sub 3. You're still on the committee, though, so you still have a perspective on this. There has been discussion and debate about funding for the homeless in California that is in the crosshairs as we deal with this budget deficit. Is all of this, to the best degree it can be, held harmless fiscally moving forward as we deal with this? Yeah,
it's a hard time, and I have just been pretty insistent that we not go backwards or pull back on any of the things we've done, because we also face a really big issue with workforce, right? There's not enough people. And so I think it's a mistake to pull back on some of our workforce education and training money, because if you don't have the people to do the implementation, then what have we done?
I want to talk about, as you depart the legislature this fall, showcasing as much of the work that you have done over the years as we can. And again, we could do a couple hours on the track record, the work that you have done since you have been a legislator. But I want to recap the successes and some of the work that you have done that's having not just made headlines or had an impact here in California, but really all over the country and making headlines around the world. When I mentioned to a colleague the other day that you and I were going to be sharing a podcast episode and listing some of the issues that I hope we could talk about, the colleague commented, he said, one of the things that I appreciate and respect about Senator Eggman is that she doesn't make the process about her. She's not in a hurry to take credit for it, doesn't insist her name be on what is some extraordinary, impactful public policy. You don't tombstone. I mean, SB 43 is not the Eggman Act. The CARE Act is not the Eggman-Umberg Act. It's not the Eggman End-of-Life Option Act. In fact, I would say in some cases, people have to dig through the stories for a while to find your name on these things. Are you fine with just letting the fruit of the labor be the reward itself?
It's about the work. It's never about me. It's about the work. And I already find myself not having an avenue to solve problems, getting frustrated. Like I sent Senator Minjavar some bill ideas for next year. Oh, when I read an article, I'm like, oh, I know how we could fix that. Like, here's something to do next year. So I don't think I'll ever stop trying to find solutions, I think, to problems that California face. I might be a frustrated legislator that I won't have the power to fix things. But again, it's never been about me. I am the most reluctant person to go to a press conference. You never see me up getting pictures for everything. There's enough. There's enough.
Sure. But then you get a call from a friend like you got who is taking advantage of the freedoms that are offered by the End of Life Option Act.
Yeah.
And that right there is reminder of your legacy.
I feel a great amount of pride in the work that we've been able to accomplish. My team and I have been together almost the whole time. We've lost some more recently. People are moving on, doing other things, but we kept together a good, solid team, which I think is important because you don't just produce bills, you produce good staffers and good people and good public servants to go out and do more work. So yeah, I don't feel like it has to be about me. It needs to be about the good work. The work will speak for itself. And hopefully the people that I've been able to touch, right? People that I've been able to mentor and support and help out in the process. They say you're only really gone when people stop remembering you. Hopefully my work will live on.
It will, absolutely. Well, a much less emotional bill than the End of Life Option Act, but still, you can see the emotion for people who break their media devices.
Right to repair.
Right to repair. I knew
you
know what I was talking about. So there's been this ongoing lively movement from the repair industry, consumer rights organizations, and these do-it-yourself fixers to make their devices fixable and open and sustainable. And time again, the movement's stared down by Apple and Microsoft. But lo and behold, sometime last year, Apple saw the light.
Yeah.
Now people don't have the frustration of having to buy a new device when they can actually get it fixed. So when you talk about success for consumers,
that's a big one. We've had love affairs with our bills, long-term relationships. I don't think there's one bill
if you don't treat them like children, at least you have love affairs with them.
I have love affairs with them, yeah. I mean, sometimes they break your heart, but I think we started that bill in 2015, 2017, but it's been a while. And the first time I couldn't get a bill hearing. I mean, Apple went around and, they wouldn't say that, but, if somebody works on your phone, it'll explode in your pocket. A lot of scary stuff.
Oh, yeah, the security issues that you can only take specialized experts that can work on these things.
Yeah.
But you're welcome to buy a new one.
Which is hogwash, right? And so, and so it became, and I just think it's a righteous issue. And that's the one I was able to get bipartisan support on, right? It's good for small business, fix-it guys, gals. It's good for the consumer. And Californians were throwing away 46,000 phones a day. A day. That's crazy, right? The amount of e-waste that we have. So we started working on it, and we're just tenacious like we are with, a lot of things. My ledge director, this was kind of his baby. And so we just kept doing it. And he's much more well-versed on it than I am. As any long-term legislator knows, you'll get a staff who's really has a pet project. But yeah, we finally got Apple to work with us. And we tried different iterations. We even had one if it was just for medical devices during COVID, because we knew that people couldn't get their x-ray machines fixed. It's not just your phones.
Sure.
It's your dishwasher, it's your x-ray machine, it's everything.
Right. What is it? The Internet of Things now.
Yes, the things. Yes. But we finally, this last year, we were approached. Seeing that we're making progress, I think the big companies decided, okay, if this is going to happen, let's at least be a part of it and then just have one way of doing it across the country. So I think Apple is now taking it up to Washington and Oregon.
That was my next question. Is it going to be federal law?
It's going to go all around the country, I think. So so that feels great. That feels like, you've done something for the environment. You've done something for consumers. You've done something for small business. I just think it's a fantastic win-win. And, out of my usual bailiwick, but like
when the angry consumer says there ought to be a law.
Yeah, boom, there's a law.
That's fantastic. Yeah. The other breaking news that I mentioned at the outset, and when I heard about this, I thought, praise the Lord.
Yeah.
This new Stanislaus State office classroom building in Stockton. And you and I have shared in the past the lamentation of Stockton getting leaped over and overlooked, particularly when it comes to this. Why not a CSU campus? And I know you have said it ain't the full university, but it is a start. So congratulations when you talk about somebody who's fought for this. What is this going to mean to the area?
It's fantastic. I think it's the state telling my constituents, we see you, we hear you, you have value. As you heard me say last time, I was here, we don't have one 4-year public university, but we had 4 prisons when I started. We only have 2 now. And this will allow them to double in size. So I think they'll go from about 1,000 students to about 2,000, which is damn near a whole university. And it's incredibly exciting. It's I think an investment from the chancellor. It's an investment from Stanislaw. And a couple of years ago, we got our own FTE. So when times are bad, the money doesn't just go back to the Turlock campus, it stays. And of course, my goal is to hopefully we'll get it up to about 5,000, and then it can be its own full-fledged CSU. But for now, we're very happy that we're able to get a $54 million building for admin, for teaching. I mean, the old building still has the morgue in the basement from when it was a developmental state hospital center, right? I mean, so let's think about that.
We could repurpose that for medical students.
Yes. No, we do a lot of health things, and it's good for that. It's our lab, but
this is great. And so someday there could be, we have Stan State, we could have a Stock State.
Yep.
Talk about legacy.
Yes.
Now, you've already mentioned this, kind of reflecting on the body of work, looking ahead and looking back at your legislative career. First, are there any other points of pride, figuratively, in terms of your legislative greatest hits that you want to bring up here? That
No, I would say the other thing in really growing the LGBTQ caucus, but also really growing the women's caucus. When I came in, I think there were 28 women, and a few of us and a lot of outside groups really decided we have to do something about this. And so we're going to get 50. Parity in the Senate, and hopefully the year after that we'll get parity in the Assembly.
So looking back, what you've already done to some degree, I mean, is there something you wish you could hang around more to see the evolution of, or jump into, that you haven't had a chance to do as you prepare to wrap this up? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I might surprise you, Brian. I want to say I'm a farmer's daughter, right? I come from an agricultural family. I was chair of ag twice in the state assembly, and we have to make sure California agriculture industry survives. And we in this building often pass laws that make it difficult for farmers to be able to do their work. And I think we've come to a point where we've knocked a lot of the smaller farmers out of the industry. And so then they become larger corporate farms. I think we're starting to see a return to some of the smaller models. I've tried to be active in how do we get more land and training for women, for other communities to go into the farming. But I think as we move forward, like really looking at regenerative ag, like how do we use, ag's the one area that we haven't been able to really address climate issues in the way that I think we still need to. How do we do that without putting them out of business? So that remains to me a real area of interest. I wasn't able to do enough. I'm still have my name on a water bill. We're trying to get a levy replacement on the water bond, I should say, not a bill. So around the ag, because I love food, right? And to me, agriculture is food, and we're feeding people, and a state with such tremendous agricultural growth and potential that we still have people who are hungry. Like, how do we work on those two issues together is a lot of interest to me.
But you're still particularly with the water bond, you're still working on that till sine die.
I'm till sine die. That's right. August 31st.
I saw something recently where you said you were renewing your social worker license.
I've got my LCSW license.
You want to go back to clients and doing that work?
We'll see. I'll probably spend a little bit of time, but back at the university setting. As you may recall, the legislature doesn't have retirement benefits here. As I near the end that horizon, it's going to be important to get a little bit more time in a CalPERS system, and then we'll see. I want to be invested in implementing a lot of this legislation I passed. I want to be invested still in coaching young women to get involved, young women of color, LGBTQ people get involved in politics. I want to stay involved in agriculture in some kind of way that I can. So I'll be active. I'll do things.
Sure,
I'm not going away.
No, absolutely.
I'm not going away.
Still going to get, as we say, in good trouble.
Yeah, in good trouble.
Yes. Do you want to go back to the farm?
We'll see. The farm, I don't know. I mean, I garden. Yeah. I garden.
Well, and I know you have a teenager at home, and you probably still want to shepherd her into the future.
I do. So I've got a little work left ahead of me.
It's great to hear, and you will not be silent, and we will still see you out there and hear from you. I want to get your outgoing lawmakers and forever social workers' perspective on the current state of our world. A lot of bloodshed in the world, a lot of chaos, and we are California, our own little progressive bubble of sanity, but the scale of abnormality out there in the world that we hear about, it's staggering. The outrage is followed not by accountability, but by adulation. This growing effort to prosecute those who are not the same as us. Have we lost our moorings? I mean, it's easy to get negative about this, but I wanted to get your perspective as we head into this next year when democracy is at stake. Are you scared?
The moral arc of the universe is long, right? But
Yes.
it bends towards justice. And I believe that. And I believe at our heart, we're good people. I think we're going through a scary time, but I think we'll come out on the other side. I mean, I have to think that as an
Sure,
optimist and as a
sure.
person who lives here and as a person who's got a young person who's getting ready to launch into the world. I know I see her and her generation and people aren't yelling and screaming. And so you wonder how we got to this point where we can't agree on the sky is blue. But I have to believe just with continued common sense and kindness and some sourdough,
Yes.
that we'll find our way, that we're more alike than we are different. I have a lot of good friends who are opposing views with me. And I say, well, you know, as long as we can agree half the time and as long as we don't beat each other up, I believe that we'll get through this.
One headline I saw recently, which I thought I would share with you, that said, even though America is again stuck in darkness, it's the queer people among us, particularly queer people of color, who have always known the way out. In other words, people who survive not only at the nexus of multiple identities, but multiple movements for liberations will be the ones to show us the way out of the darkness. Even if they don't realize it, they always have been the ones driving us forward towards the light. So a community that has been persecuted and has had to fight so deeply for rights to sustain those rights, not to mention earn new ones, they're opening the door and walking ahead of many of us.
Yeah. Well, because we're used to being oppressed, right? We come from that and just like pick yourself up, get out that door. It's going to be okay. You're going to be fabulous. You're going to be beautiful. Just do it. I had the occasion to go viral recently, and a lot of folks misunderstood some of the things I said, but appreciated my common sense, I think. And so I got a lot of new followers, and I said, they're going to be so disappointed when all I'm talking about is sourdough and kindness on my little TikTok.
But may you continue to talk about that. Keep making bread and breaking bread. It is a pleasure to talk to you. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and see the amazing work that you have done and do these podcasts. Look forward to seeing you out there post legislative, but I know there's still plenty of work to do in the next few months. So thank you again for joining us and good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
State Senator Susan Eggman of Stockton, chair of the Legislative LGBTQ Caucus, representing California's 5th Senate District in the Northern Central Valley. That brings us to a close of this edition of Then There's California. We're a production of the California State Senate Democratic Caucus, with technical assistance and production support from Ben Abaya, Nick Boulay, Blake Cooper, Michelle Baker, McClenna Woods, and the graphic artistry of Tim Davis. From the state capitol in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. Thanks for listening to Then There's California.